Okay.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Mike with Mortgage Solutions, and this is
Tiana King with Colomb Realty.
And this is our first real interview on Coffee with Mike. I tried to introduce it yesterday on my first live, and it was Coffee with Mike during COVID when we couldn't meet. And it was okay. Got a bunch of realtors on there, and we chatted because nobody else could actually get together. And I felt it was a good space to just talk about the industry. And then as they let us out of our homes and we got to get back into the world, we stopped doing Coffee with Mike. But I felt like TikTok could use, or we could use TikTok in the same vein and ask some of those questions that nobody's asking.
Yeah.
And so you and I had a conversation a little bit ago, and I wanted to bring those questions to it. So we'll jump right in. I guess the first question that came up about it is, when you don't feel great about your realtor, can you fire your realtor?
Yeah, absolutely. Just like any other job. I mean, you have a contracted agreement, and even within that contract, you have certain standards that you have to uphold. And sometimes that doesn't get met. So absolutely, and I actually would advocate for people to look into what their rights are as the client, so you know what to expect, and then make a decision based off of what is already written in that contract.
Now, there's a difference between a realtor working for a buyer and a realtor working for a seller. I mean, or is there? What am I missing something? Because I'm a lender. I don't know the real nuances of those.
Well, I mean, again, so like at the top of each, buyer broker agreement or listing agreement, there are set terms of what type of behavior and what type of professionalism is expected. Like honesty and transparency, and so many like little things that are like specifically more in regards to handling the situation more ethically and doing what's in the best interest of the client. And honestly, it depends on the type of agreement you sign, because there are like agency agreements, there are transaction broker agreements where honestly they don't owe you very much. They're just kind of getting you through the transaction, and they don't have to, like sometimes you're, depending on that, you don't expect a transaction broker to be your therapist and walk you through all the hard stuff that, a different type of agency may offer. So it depends on the agreement that you sign.
So, I mean, we could break into that deeper conversation. You said agency agreement versus a transaction broker. I mean, are you an agent in your own right, or what is?
Actually, in New Mexico, we really don't practice agency. But, for instance, when you go and do like your listing, you have fiduciary broker duties. Off the top of my head, under TikTok live pressure, I can't list them, but it's essentially, like you're going to, the job and the outline of the job, and being honest and handling things within due time, and making sure people are getting taken care of. And sometimes I don't feel like those things get met. So yeah, I mean, coming back full circle to the answer to that question of whether or not you can fire your realtor, terminate the contract you have, you absolutely can, but you also need to be more well-versed in the contract that you are signing. And ultimately, that's where I'm, the professional. Me as the realtor, as the broker, I should walk my clients through their options and make sure that they feel comfortable with what they're signing, know what expectations they have. Both of us, like you need to know what to expect from your client, and they need to know what to expect from you. And sometimes I think our agreements get brushed over, and it's like they don't know the full extent. A lot of it is not written in layman's terms, so it can be difficult to understand. So I think it would be really beneficial to really prioritize breaking down that contract and making sure they're aware of what their rights are as a client. Because it seems like sometimes people really feel like they're pinned in a corner. And that's not great. I've run across several situations where people didn't feel great about the situation they're in, but I'm like, we really can't come to me for much advice or insight, because as another realtor, that's not my place to give you any advice. You're contracted and licensed with someone, or you're contracted with another licensed professional. I can't interfere with that, but I've found a few situations where I did feel bad for the person, and just redirected them to like, well, you need to discuss that with your broker and maybe their QB if you have issues, but I cannot give you insight on that. So, yeah.
And I mean, back to like you said, people feel like they're backed into a corner. They can't really negotiate or get their way, out of a contract or understand their rights in the contract. I mean, we would assume people would read the contract that they signed. They would try to ask the right questions, but a lot of times maybe they've got somebody who brushed over the terms and they just signed we'll say buyer's broker agreement, because that's a recent thing in the last year or two.
Yeah.
And so they don't understand what it really means. What resources maybe could they go to? How could they maybe figure out if they need to look at terminating that contract or basically firing that realtor?
Dude, it's hard because I mean, essentially, and I personally never would, so I don't understand this mentality. Like if somebody had a buyer broker agreement with me, like you can mutually agree to terminate.
Okay.
And that's just a matter of a conversation.
Okay.
Like, hey, I'm not feeling super great about this. I could even, as the broker, be like, I don't know if we're working really well.
Yeah.
So that's even with the buyer broker agreement, you can do, there's an option to do just individual properties or for a certain time span.
Okay.
So when you're meeting someone for the first time, you're not going to get them on a buyer broker agreement, or maybe I don't know if I personally would or if anyone should. That's up to the individual.
Okay.
But you can absolutely like, hey, it's just for this one property. Let's meet each other. Let's see if we like each other. And this will work.
Okay.
As far as I know, I haven't heard anything in terms of people doing like the first buyer broker agreement 6 months out and then them end up not meshing very well. And then, oh, well, sorry, you're my buyer for the next 6 months. And you can't look at other houses with other realtors if you sign this agreement with me. That's a little weird.
Okay.
And I can't imagine other people would do that.
So it's possible that would exist, but you haven't heard of it being stuck and locked in. It's like, it's not working.
Yeah, no, because if somebody approached me and was like, yeah, I don't know if this is working out. I don't know if our personalities align or whatever it may be. I'd be like, no worries. Like you can absolutely just mutually terminate.
Okay.
But there have been instances as far as like listing agreements. People find out you're a realtor and then they just want to spill all your beans to you. And
sure.
I'm unhappy about this and X, Y, and Z. And it's like, I can't really help you right now.
Because you're the listing agent and it's the buyer that's coming to you and you're representing basically the seller side of it all.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of different things that I've seen kind of play out in a weird way. You just have to be careful and making sure that you're not crossing any professional boundaries as, being a licensed professional. And I'm like, I'm like, that's a little bit of a liability.
Sure.
Like I can't give you any legal advice. I can't, but yeah, I mean, as a buyer going into a buyer broker agreement, that's something that you need to understand is you can do a short term, you can do it for one property, you can do it for one day, you can do it for a week. But maybe just be considerate of who you're working with and whether or not you're going to like them and their character and how they show up for you and how they support you throughout this transaction. Like that's really important, is making sure you are aligned with the person you're working with and then not being afraid to have the conversation that you're unhappy.
Okay.
Because realistically, people make mistakes. Not everyone is, always intentionally trying to ignore people or not be responsive or some of those things that generally upset people. So a lot of times the conversation can really help, bring your issues to light and maybe help, remedy it. But people kind of just suffer in silence sometimes. And I'm like, don't do that.
Okay.
Like your time's important, your money's important, your investment's important. Like, don't be quiet, just because you feel uncomfortable with addressing something that you're not feeling great about.
Sure. You're not comfortable, or you're not, you don't feel well versed in it. So then you just kind of sit back and hope for the best as a consumer. And then, a realtor moving forward is like, well, they're not complaining. We're still, everything's fine. Yeah.
And it's like, dude, this is, it's big. And honestly, from my perspective, it's like I'm pretty good at reading people, so you can tell when people don't like being bugged very much, and only want the essential updates. You can tell when people want to have consistent communication or check in every so often, or phone calls or text messages. Like, you can learn, people throughout the process. There have been a couple people that I personally was like, this is not going to work, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm like absolutely okay with being like, hey, you know what? I don't think we're very aligned in terms of what kind of, you know, what your expectations are and what I'm actually able to provide, you know, especially when it's along the lines of me giving the professional insight and advice that people choose to disregard. And then they end up in a weird position. I'm like, see, and now you're mad at me.
Yeah.
But it's because you didn't listen.
Okay.
You know, and there's been times where I'm like, I don't think this is gonna work out. Like, are you cool with like finding someone else to work with?
Yeah.
And they are, you know, because they probably had some built up animosity or, you know, resentment towards me or whatever it is. Like everybody's perspectives are different. And that's, I think, when it comes to this working relationship, you just kind of have to know who you're gonna work well with.
Okay.
And that's not always easy to tell until you get to some of the harder parts.
So, I mean, is there a way for somebody to get to those harder parts quickly and kind of almost like an interview process? How and what? Because I know new buyers coming into the market, they would have issues knowing the right questions to ask and how to feel that out. Like what should they be looking for, or what questions should they ask to find who they mesh well with? I mean, do you have anything that might help with that?
Yeah, dude, like seriously, I think one of the best things is actually sitting down and having a conversation because it's pretty quick. Yeah, well, maybe that's the personal bias. I don't know if that's the same for everyone else. Like I said, I'm naturally pretty good at like connecting with people, and you know, I'm pretty adaptive. Like I can, within reason,
Sure.
Like I'm not going to just change my entire being for people. Right. But you can tell pretty immediately if you're going to mesh well with someone, at least in my opinion. So even just meeting a couple of different brokers, you know, for coffee and talking with them, and you'll kind of get a good insight on some of them, you know, like this maybe a stretch, but like you should be more curious about like the type of character they have, you know, how they speak about other people, you know, like really basic things that even when you're just forming a friendship, you would want better qualities out of a person.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, just even sitting down and having a conversation is huge. And then following up with like, what's your availability like? You know, I'm a generally pretty anxious person. You know, I ask a lot of questions. I hate being perceived as being like needy or too much, or, you know, but that's just, I can be an anxious person. That would be my biggest concern, as bothering people and having way too many questions and needing a lot of reassurance through something as big as buying a home. So that's probably something I would ask is like, you know, are you going to be available to take my calls? And this is more on like a personal side. Like, are you able to meet often? Can you give me regular updates? You know, maybe some pretty simple questions along those lines of, you know, like what you need.
An idea of the expectations. Like, what am I supposed to expect as a buyer? How am I supposed to figure this out? But do the I guess the interview process, it doesn't happen like a phone call to the brokerage and then they end up with a realtor. A lot of times they want to look at a house, and so they somehow get connected to a realtor, and there's no time there to have that interview conversation and figure out if that's a long term. I mean, is it just part of the game and part of the process? It's just that's the investment you make a little bit, and then maybe after that first house you look at?
No, absolutely. And it is like, it's like a spur of the moment thing. And you know what? A lot of people aren't familiar with the process. Maybe there's some, you know, home buying vets out there that are like used to it, and they know
they've done this like 16 times. It's fine.
Yeah, but a lot of times people really don't know the ins and out of it. So like I've had a family member actually like call me and they're like, hey, I like your listing. And I'm like, nice, cool. You want to check it out? And they're like, yeah, absolutely. And they had looked at, during that conversation after we looked at that home, they're like, yeah, we've been looking at other houses. I'm like, what the heck? Like, we're not talking, like, you didn't hit me up at all? And they were like, well, I thought you could only work with the realtor whose sign was on the house. I'm like, no, that's not how this works.
People don't know, so they just assume things.
Yeah, like, that's not how this works at all. You know? And so I think it's just a matter of, you know, genuinely people are just uneducated of the process. And I think too, that's like even with the youth initiative that I'm trying to get started is like basic information in terms of like what to expect and know when you get to like these bigger life goals,
Okay.
you know, what is it going to look like? How do you get there? What questions do you need to ask? You know, like you need to know how to protect yourself,
Okay.
you know? But when it comes to, you know, being a real estate broker, a lot of it too is like, I feel like all the clients I've ever aligned with, like we're just, the energy's there. Like we immediately just, you know, click or don't.
Yeah.
And it's pretty easy to make an assessment.
Okay.
But yeah, it really is something. Like if you go and look at one house and you just called on it and you show up and you check it out with this realtor, there are so many good realtors in our area that are really good people. So most of the time you are, you know, you're gonna be fine.
Okay.
But it would be worth, if you are potentially interested in continuing to use that realtor to show you properties and help you throughout this process, in between, instead of just hitting them up to show you the next house, maybe it would be a good idea to sit down and, hey, can we go grab some coffee? We're interested in using you as our realtor.
Okay.
And get the feel for them.
Okay.
You know, it's like there's a lot of different things that people, I think, you know, would like to align on.
Sure.
And you can find that out with just a quick conversation. So
interesting. So as far as you got two different things you mentioned. One was your youth initiative about educating young people to, you know, grow up into a place that makes sense and they have a path, not like some of us who jumped into it and said, I have no idea what I'm doing.
Just wing it.
And wing it. And somehow it worked out. Maybe, I bought a house.
Yeah.
So I think it's okay.
It worked.
It worked. I'm still living in a house, so we're fine. But I guess, you know, with the youth initiative, I mean, do you start with real estate or what do you start with on on educating young people?
Well, that's what I know.
Okay.
So that's why I'm like, any career that I had, well, anything I did in life, like I really wanted it to be focused on helping people.
Okay.
Being a realtor, you know, like initially I kind of had some hesitations because, you know, you get the stigma of like glorified car salesmen or people like, you know, trying to take advantage of you. So I was like, yuck.
Just like a lender. It's great. I love it.
I didn't want to do it. And so I seriously, you know, like, but I grew up with my mom. You know, I watched how much she loved helping people and she really did.
And she was a realtor this entire time as well.
Yeah, she's been a realtor for over 30 years.
Wow.
And she loved helping people.
Okay.
And it didn't matter. Like she would get maybe a few weeks into the process and it wasn't like, okay, yeah, we're under contract and at week 3, some bad news comes up. It's like, get them out of there, you know, go find what's next, like get them in a better situation instead of, you know, sometimes you may find a more pushy personality, you know, it's part of the job. Like, you know, you invest 3 weeks and then your transaction goes down the drain and it's like, that can be devastating. That doesn't feel great,
right? But
you're still working in the best interest of your client.
Yeah.
You know, so there are a lot of instances like that I saw her work through and it was always the client first.
Okay.
You know, it was never about the money.
Making the transaction actually happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And so with seeing that, you know, again, like when I came into this industry, it was just that the like bottom feeder receptionist working in an office, and I just didn't like the feel of it. You know, I didn't know if it was something I was going to be really aligned with on, you know, like a personal like belief and core value system. I didn't know if it was going to be something I could align with. But after a couple of years of that, there's other things I want to do. Like my dad builds homes. I want to build homes. Like I want to get on the development side of it. And actually I found that I am actually a pretty good realtor. Like I'm actually pretty dang good at it because I genuinely, like naturally, I care for people, you know, and I want the best for not just my clients, but just on a general level, you know, that's my perception of life. Like I want everything to be good for everyone. And, you know, like I have a really good, I think I have really good character. Okay. And that's something I can say like pretty confidently because it's one of the only things I like about myself. Like I'm a good person.
I'm a good person. Please like me.
But but not in like the super obnoxious, arrogant sense. Like I absolutely can be a piece of crap some days, and I have bad days. But for the most part, I mean well, you know, and I always want well for other people and especially my clients because this is a huge deal. It's a lot of money. So there's been lots of times where, things didn't work out the way I would have hoped, but it doesn't matter. What I want doesn't really matter. It's what's best for these people.
Okay.
And so going into this like youth initiative, I'm like, cool, like I kind of found my groove with, feeling good about my career and making things happen. But something that really became super apparent quick is people don't know what the heck they're doing.
Right.
They have no idea what process they're starting. Excuse me, I just spit.
You're so good. You're excited. You're passionate. Keep going.
But,
we'll mop up later.
It's carpet. But people have no idea what they're doing.
Mm.
They have no idea what to look for in, safe situations and good investments and what type of people to work with and what type of people to look out for. And that became really apparent super quick.
Okay.
Honestly, adults, yes, I am so happy, especially there's younger adults that need a lot of assistance. And being from San Juan County, this is a pretty, we have our economical challenges. We're a pretty rural area. I can personally say this isn't just like outside looking in. Like my family, both my parents grew up on the south side of Farmington. Okay. And didn't have anything. Right. That's my parents hate when I talk about them like that.
It's where we come from. We know our history, right?
Yeah. And so they always like, stop using us as examples.
It's relatable. People understand it.
But it is. And they really did. Like they didn't have like anything. Like my mom has 7 siblings and they all grew up in like this tiny little house, and grandpa refinanced the house probably like 4 times and put grandma in a bad position. Like it was not good. Okay. And my dad's parents did pretty good. They live, you probably have seen their house. They live right across the Citizens Bank downtown. Mm-hmm. They have this cute, adorable little 2-bedroom house. They raised a family of 5 in it. Okay. It was $11,000 when they bought it. It's so cute, but but my parents, they didn't know how to, they eventually, my dad did really, really well for himself and, built his construction business. And, but still, even then, like you see how much value there is coming from a family that does have more stability and insight on investments and home purchasing and even your credit score and, the importance of it. Right. And, realistically, I think there are probably a majority of families don't have that kind of insight and generational wealth and knowledge to pass down. Okay. So that's something that I've like really felt pretty passionate about, where I'm like, we need to like raise our kids to be successful and not just survive, like they're just getting through it. And it's like, that's not how life should be. And they have options and they can succeed in life. And, they just don't know that, and they don't know where to start or even what questions to ask. And then when you use Google, it overwhelms you with information. Right. And, it's like, it genuinely can be so helpful to have an older person that has a little bit more experience just kind of walk you through this process that's intimidating. And then once you figure it out, it's really that's not that hard. Sure. But there are a lot of mistakes you can make getting there that can put you in a bad position. So just trying to avoid that. Okay.
Wow, there's so much.
I talk a lot.
It's great.
It comes full circle.
It does. Like that's when we were talking 2 weeks ago, I was like, this is gonna be great. I'll just sit and let her chat, and and it's great content. It's no fluff either. And it inspires more questions that I think would continue on with any other interviews that we would have. One of the questions that I would want to come back to would be when you're new coming into it and you didn't have like a class or a young person's initiative or something that educated you, an adult who's worked and now they're jumping into it all, what should they be looking for? What questions should they be asking? How do they set themselves up to protect themselves and for the success? Because they may not get connected with a realtor like you who would want to give them everything and say, hey, this is how it might look. And it may not be pretty. Mm-hmm. Like there's people that are going to fluff as much as they can to make it as attractive and really hook people in. What can we provide to buyers like that, or even sellers?
Well, okay. So to some extent, like they have to take responsibility for themselves and like show up for themselves, and the best way to do that is just start reaching out, like start asking questions, how many brokerages do you pass on a daily basis when you're driving to work or where you're running around town? Go stop into one of those places. Okay. Go talk to someone, and that's probably why I do pretty good at things in general is because I'm not afraid to talk.
Sure.
Like closed mouths don't get fed.
Okay.
Start asking questions, you know, and I actually really had the great pleasure to, my cousin, he's my older cousin, hit me up and he was like, we're ready. Like we want to start trying to do this.
Okay. And
I was like, sweet, dude. Okay, cool. And then I'm a little annoying. I know him more personally. I know he's not going to hit me back up for another month. So I'm like, dude, you know, text me back. Like, when can I come over? I used to be a Jehovah's Witness. Like, I will show up at your door.
Right.
And I will be there. Like, you need to get this done, especially because he expressed that he wanted to.
Okay. And
finally, like, I got to go and sit down with him and his wife. Okay. And honestly, he flat out, like, told me, like, kind of backhanded. Like, I wouldn't work with you.
Really?
Yeah, he told me straight up. He's like, if I didn't know you, I wouldn't work with you because you're a young, pretty girl.
Okay.
And that would intimidate me. Like, he flat out told me that. And I was like, thanks. But also...
Weird, like, compliment insult.
Yeah, and he was like, and you're really smart, and it makes me feel stupid. I'm like, that's the problem.
Okay.
Don't be embarrassed.
Okay.
Like, do not be embarrassed. Like, majority of people have no idea what the heck they're doing.
Okay.
Like, do not for a second think like, oh, you know, like I'm, you know, 45 years old and I'm still renting. Like, I think sometimes people's self-esteem gets in the way of them wanting better for themselves.
Okay.
You know, because I think we live in, especially here in our country, like we're very materialistic and like we're based off of consumerism and you're constantly comparing yourself to other people. And it's like, yeah, dude, but you don't know what's going on behind closed doors over there. They're in thousands and thousands of dollars of debt to maintain a certain image, you know, but it's like you realistically, you know, it's like, I love that quote where it's like comparison is the thief of joy. Like, don't do that. Yeah. You start to feel embarrassed and you start to feel like, you know, like you don't have a great self-esteem and you look down on yourself. And I was like, don't do that. Okay. You know, like the best thing you can do is advocate for yourself.
Right.
Try to educate yourself, you know, and it doesn't have to be with me. Right. Like I said, there's a lot of other really awesome realtors in this area that do mean well and will help you. But, you know, it's just like, I just feel like people get this mentality and stuck on this idea that I can't, you know, I can't afford it.
Okay.
Relative, that's fair.
you know, and that's the thing. I can't. Well, why not? And then we do that research, right? And
it can be discouraging.
That's where lenders we like to say, hey, get with us first, not because we want to, you know, control the deal, but we need to get you pre-approved and tell you what you truly can do, so that way you're aware, and then you have that freedom to go out there and say confidently, I know I can do this because of this. But the problem is that people are intimidated by lenders and the stuff that we're going to bring up.
You're going to look at all their dirty
secrets. We will. You guys, they come to you and feel dumb because they don't know what the right questions are. We come to them, we ask all the questions, and they don't. They feel judged and shamed.
Yeah.
We don't judge people. We don't have time for it. We're too busy trying to help you get a deal done. And I tell people that too. I say, you know, there's no such thing as a dumb question in this industry. There really isn't. You don't know what you don't know. So we need to tell you what to know and give you that information. And everybody's so unique and their lives are so different from one to the next. You know, you can try to compare yourself to your person down the street, but you have a different upbringing. You had a different lifestyle. You have different finances that may not apply to them. You know, they may have made their fortune in Bitcoin while you busted your butt or an inheritance, or, you know, they ground it out for 40 years at the same plant and then they retired on it, even though they look young and healthy. They, you know, maybe
65 years old.
You know, they finally bought their first house because they got it. And it's one of those, you're right. You can't compare to somebody else. You can see what they have and maybe think you like part of that. Okay, well, what does that look like, and how can we get you to that point? But we do need people to be asking those questions and you know, giving them that permission to ask questions. And I think that comes all the way back to, you know, finding the right realtor, finding the right people to work with, is them letting you ask those questions and not judging you, not coming down on you, or even joking about a question that you may have asked. You know, there's a little bit of a balance there.
Yeah. Well, some people won't, like, and this sounds messed up, but you know, like some people don't want to spend their time helping you because you're not an immediate, oh yeah, dude, you're pre-qualified. We can start looking for a house tomorrow. It's going to take a little bit of work and reassurance and just to even get you to that point. Some people don't want to do that.
Right.
You know, some lenders don't want to, some realtors don't want to. My favorite thing to tell people is, you know, talk to your lender, see where you're at.
Okay. Because
a lot of times you'd be surprised. It may take you just a few months to get pre-qualified. It may take you a year. It may take you 2 years. But honestly, that time is going to come and go, regardless of whether or not you choose to apply yourself and change where you're at right now. Okay. So it's like, don't be worried about, you know, the right now, even if it's not working out in your favor, because it's going to come and go before you know it. Yeah. So if you figure out where you're at right now and you do need to put some work in, at least you know where to start. That's what I love about lenders. They're like, dude, your credit score is at like 520. Okay. You're going to have to get that up to like a 620. You have this X, Y, and Z on your credit score. Like you're going to improve your credit score, you're going to have to pay some of these things off. Right. But what that does is it creates this roadmap of, you know, this is what I need to do. Yeah. And then you can set realistic goals based off of what is actually going to be beneficial to you. So that is where I'm like, go talk to a lender. Okay. Get your ducks in a row. Like you can absolutely do some of those things. I'm like, you can get done in a couple months. Right. Because now you know what you need to pay off. Once you pay that off, your credit score will improve. You can probably start looking for a house in the next couple of months. Okay. And people just think they're like so far off. And I'm like, honestly, most of the time you're a lot closer than you think. You just need to make some minor adjustments. So, but yeah, you know, some lenders wouldn't want to like sit down and, hey, okay, you're going to have to do this, this, and this, you know, and offer reassurance. But, you know, most of the time I don't think that's the case.
It can, that's the thing. A lot of people feel transactional. And I think that's customer service everywhere. A lot of times it's just, you know, you're person, you know, number 5, please come talk to me. Yeah, this is not going to work next. And and you know, your common buyer, maybe even common seller will feel, you know, like a number going through it. But then on the other flip side of that coin, you know, you get these other big box mortgage companies and they're going to do click button, get pre-approved. But we all know in the big picture, that's not actually how it's going to go, especially considering the transaction. So you want to have those longer conversations, have a plan about how to get where you need to be, even if it is, you're pre-approved right now because we reviewed it. I know if I've got a qualified customer, it'll take me 20 minutes to pre-qualify them. If we have any hurdles, maybe a full week just to flesh out a couple of details. But we want those details figured out beforehand. We want to make sure that before you go under a contract, before you fall in love with a house, we've got all the other wrinkles ironed out on the finance side to where the house is the only problem. Yeah. And that would probably be another conversation for another day. As far as you're pre-approved, what about the house? What fits? Perfect. Do you have any final words, final thoughts, items to present before we shut down?
Nope.
Nothing? Should y'all talk down? Or are you going to save it for the next conversation?
You can't ask me specific questions like that. My brain will just go,
you'll go like, a million miles.
First
thought that comes to your head so we can sign off well. First thought, first idea, first piece of advice.
Do not be afraid to start the process. You know, try to find genuine people. Make sure that you're sitting down with the professionals that you're looking forward to working with and that you're aligned with them and that you kind of just get a good feel for them. And, you know, I like local too. Like think local for your lenders. They'll answer their phones on the evenings and weekends. And that's incredibly helpful when you're going through a stressful process. And educate yourself. Like literally that's the answer to all of this, you know, it can be a very intimidating process and all of that fear will completely dissipate as soon as you take the steps towards educating yourself. And if you meet people that don't give you the time of day and don't want to sit down and help you learn, they're the wrong person and you can absolutely find somebody that will help you. So
great. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. We'll probably have to have a reoccurring interview conversation.
Yeah, so. Thanks for making me do this. This is actually fun. I enjoyed this.
I know, you speak so well. And I'm like, when we had our first conversation, we actually recorded something. And when we had our first conversation, we hung up on the recording. And then I was like, why are we not recording this? Yeah. It was such a great conversation.
No, that last conversation I did really enjoy too. And it's like, You're just gonna have to put me in situations where we talk like this, because if you ask me specific questions, I'm gonna go completely blank.
We're good. We'll keep a list of scripts. So
okay.
Thanks everybody for joining. We really appreciate it. You guys have a great day.
Bye.